Welcome to this lighting effects and reflections course. In this chapter on reflections, we're going to take a look at the different types of reflections we have available in the Unreal Engine, which means we're going to look at screen space reflections, reflection captures, planar reflections, and a quick look at capturing to a 2D or cube map render target. The level we have is called Reflections, found in Fundamentals, Lighting_Rendering, Effects and Reflections, Start Assets, Reflections. If you don't have any reflections set up, so if you haven't done any work on the reflections yourself, then by default you only have screen space reflections. So that's the first type we're going to look at, and that's the only type that you have enabled by default. We can take the TV here as an example, and for the sake of making it easier to see what we're doing, what you might want to do first is quickly open up the material of the TV. So I have the TV selected in the bottom right, Materials, Element 0. I'm going to open it up, and we're going to set roughness here to 0. That makes it very, very reflective. It's going to make it easier to see exactly what we're doing with reflections. And you can see that's now active, but it doesn't make a huge difference. And it doesn't make a huge difference because that's exactly because of screen space reflections. You can see if you move the camera in certain ways, you are able to see a nice reflection in the TV. Screen space reflections have a certain limitation that they can only display what's currently rendered on screen. So they reuse the information that's already rendered, and then that's what's displayed in the reflection. But therefore, if you move away from it and look towards the TV, the reflection disappears because what these pixels would have wanted to reflect is no longer on screen. It's outside the edge of the screen. So it can only reflect what's actually visible on screen. It is also rather noisy, and this is going to be very, very hard to see on the video, but try to position it like this and then look on the transition between no reflection and reflection. This is very noisy, but on the bright side, it is fully real time. So if something would be moving, for example, someone would walk past the window, the reflection of that person walking past the window would be shown in real time on the reflection. It's also precise. It precisely reflects from every pixel, has the correct reflection of what that pixel would be reflecting. But again, the biggest drawback is the fact that things disappear in the wrong viewing angle. Because of that, we have the second type. Reflection captures are placed to be mixed with screen space reflections, and both of the systems have pros and cons, but we're essentially trying to use the strengths of both systems to work around the weaknesses. You can create a reflection capture by going to the placement panel here, and then visual effects, and in visual effects you look for a sphere reflection capture. You also have a box reflection capture. Both of these are the same, they're just different shapes. 90% of the time we only use sphere reflection captures, so that's also what I'm going to use here. You can see if you place a sphere reflection capture in front of the TV, just click and drag it in. There might be a bit of a delay there while it updates the capture information. You see we now have a reflection in the TV no matter how we look around. In fact, if you would pay close attention, this might be hard to see, but if you look at the transition here, the edge is currently there. The couch is shifting position. That is the blend from screen space reflection switching back to the reflection captures. So it's still going to switch between the two. Screen space reflection always gets the highest priority. But at least now we have a nice reflection going at all times. So in almost every project that you create in Unreal, you should always be using sphere reflection captures or alternatively box reflection captures, because just relying on screen space reflections alone will not be sufficient. Now, these sphere reflection captures, you can see this is a pretty sharp result we're getting. We're getting a pretty decent reflection. That is happening because we're using non-standard settings. So I'd just like to point this out for a second, that we went to settings, project settings, and in here, if you were to look for reflection, you can see that we've set reflection capture resolution to 1024. By default, I forgot what the default value is. I believe it's 128 or something rather small. If you increase the size of it, you will get much sharper reflections, but it's also going to take a lot more memory. So try to adjust it based on your needs. For most games, I would leave it at the default value or only a little bit higher. For non-game usage, you can probably bump this up. One more thing to note about the reflection captures is that they're not real time. So this literally takes a picture, a 360-degree picture at a certain point in time, and that's what's used on the reflection. If someone would be walking through that hallway there, it would not be visible on the reflection. They are, however, less noisy, but on the downside again, they are less precise. it takes the reflection as seen from this actor. So you see, if you move this around, the reflection moves around on this TV as well, which is rather strange. That shouldn't be happening. That's not realistic. So they're not precise. The position, the reflection that you see is not going to correctly match the position of the object it should be reflecting. So that's the downside. And then lastly, we also have planar reflections. Planar reflections, which you can see over here, visual effects again, planar reflection. You can drag it in. It creates a rather large plane. The plane is temporary. You won't see this while the application is running, but it's the plane that captures the information. A planar reflection captures only to a flat plane and is therefore only suitable for any object that is very flat. For example, a mirror, a frame, for example the mirror frame we have over here, a body of water, a water surface, maybe a glass panel or a window, essentially something like that. But something that's flat and fairly small in size could be covered using a planar reflection. A planar reflection can be both real-time or capture once only. If it's real-time, it is however very heavy on performance. So what you can do now is you can try to rotate this, the plane, and you could place it in front of the painting over here, or the frame, mirror, and you can use scale to change the scale of it. So use a regular scale and you can set that to, I think, 0.02 and 0.03 tends to be pretty decent values. You can see it's pretty small now. It's about the size of the frame. I'm going to position it a little bit in the back. You can turn off the preview plane as well. It says here show preview plane. So I'm going to say no, don't do that. And what we have now is this. If you have trouble seeing the reflection, by the way, it's probably because it's a little bit inside the wall. So try moving it forward and you can see there is a reflection created by the planar reflection. This is ideal for creating mirrors again, if they're rather small in size. There's a property here that says capture every frame. Turn it off preferably. If you do not, it will be capturing in real time, and again it is heavy. And you can also set the quality of it. If you go to the first section again on planar reflection, expand to the options, and you can set screen percentage is 100 and will give you a sharper reflection. Now lastly, as mentioned, there is also a possibility of capturing to a render target, and that might be something that could at times be useful, especially again for surfaces that are highly reflective such as mirrors, or in times when you need reflection but it has to be done in an extremely performance efficient way. Right, now if you look for capture in the placement panel, you can see we have a scene capture 2D and a scene capture cube. These will capture to those render targets. We're going to use a scene capture cube because we are going to capture to a cube map. You get a camera, you position the camera where you need it, and then in here in the properties it says scene capture, texture target. You can bind that to the example cube render target you just made. So fill it in the properties over here. I'm going to press the arrow to take the selection from the content browser. And you can see what happens if you open up the texture now. This is a capture in real time because you can actually see the trees move in the wind here of what the camera sees as a texture. If you move the camera around, you can see it move there too. Now that in turn could then be used on inside of a that's used in the environment. So for example, you could take the frame here and do a special material setup where this cube map is used in the material itself. You would have now essentially made a manually made reflection, or you can also use it for example, a security camera and all kinds of other cool things. This is not that commonly done, but it's a good additional tool to have in your arsenal. Now to wrap up, I'm going to open the finished level just to show you how we can set all of this up. So in effects and reflections, finished assets, reflections underscore finished. And then once the level is loaded, you can see here how it's been set up. There is a reflection capture here in front of the TV. You tend to place these primarily in front of very reflective or very bright surfaces. So there's a sphere reflection capture placed in front of the TV for that reason. There's also one placed in front of the window for that reason, and the other side of the window. We also often place general ones. So this one here in the middle of the outdoor area is a general one that's meant to be a fallback general reflection all materials can fall back to if needed. By that same idea, this one is here for the same reason. It's just a fallback general one. to cover the majority of the area with at least some form of reflection. This one was located here because the light is very bright and there might be a lot of reflective surfaces nearby, for example the kitchen table here or some of the plates and so on. So again, near very bright or near very reflective surfaces you would place a sphere reflection capture. Near very flat but very reflective surfaces you could place a planar reflection. So that's what happened here for the frame, same for that frame, same for that frame, and same for the body of water here. And you can probably do it also for the window. And everything else is using screen space reflections mixed up with the rest. And the result is this. There's one closing note that I have on the content we just covered. If you are going to be using planar reflections, do be aware that they need a special setting to be enabled in the project settings, which is the property called global clip plane. This is already enabled for this project, but if you're going to make a brand new project or your own project, you will have to enable this. So we've gone through how to set up reflections in Unreal, which means screen space reflections, reflection captures, planar reflections, and we took a very quick look also at the fact that you can capture to a cube map and attempt to manually set up reflections as well.